Hello, beautiful. And what I'd like to know is what is good in your life today? I'm Kia, and this is another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. And this one is incredibly special because if you don't know, I have started a YouTube channel and I am now publishing those female veterans, our heroes, who feel comfortable sharing their story with video on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't gone to follow it, please go to YouTube and hit follow. And you can also go and find me on Instagram at the Female Veterans Podcast. All of that information is in the description box of this episode below, as well as I will be posting it throughout this episode. And I have some exciting news for you that you'll hear at the end. So if you stick around for that, you'll find out something very special. So without further ado, I want to tell you about my guest. Her name is Jenn, and she served 8 years in the Army. She is doing something really special, and she has written a book. It's called A Shadow of Me, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about what led her to write this book and how it can impact your life. So before I bring her out, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Eris Health and Mental Health Code. You can find Mental Health Code on Instagram. Obviously, I support mental health. You know, we have to do the work. And there's lots of information about this in the description of this episode. These are my two sponsors. I want to thank them so much for supporting the Female Veterans Podcast. And if you didn't know, you can find the Female Veterans Podcast streaming on Citizen Green TV. It is in your app store. It's free. You can support me there as well. So let's bring out Jenn and hear her story. Hi, Jenn.
Hello, Kia. It's nice to see you.
I'm so happy to have you on the Female Veterans Podcast and so honored that you have come to be a guest.
Well, I'm excited to be here today, and I hope that we can have some words that certainly one just show what veteran female veterans can do, but also really pave the way to let the new generation come forward also.
I agree. I agree. And it's funny that you mentioned that because my little daughter, she's my son's girlfriend, but she lives with me. And one of her best friends is joining the military. She's in JROTC, and her trajectory is to go to the military. And I'm always offering advice for her because this is what it is. Like the generations,
Right.
continue. The women in the military continue to grow, and they need to be aware of what our stories are and what we've experienced.
Yeah, totally. I agree 100%. That's exciting.
Yeah. So let's dive right into it. What made you join the military?
So one, just 100% honestly, I had four wisdom teeth that needed to be pulled, and I didn't know how I was going to get them pulled, and I heard that you got free dental and medical in the military, and also it sounded like fun. I had ideas of grandeur of being a combat medic and running up hills and saving people's lives and things like that. And so yeah, I raised my hand and signed in.
I definitely can vibe with that. I think a lot of female veterans can understand that joining out of need. And so many of us, either have come through military families or you were trying to get a better life, which was what I was doing. So definitely I can understand that. What was boot camp like for you?
Boot camp was actually pretty fun. I went to Fort Lost in the Woods, or Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I actually write about this in my book, a couple pieces of it. I had never been in an area so humid before. I came from the West Coast, California, and all of a sudden I found myself in August of many, many years ago. I think it was 1992 or 1991. It was really hot, and I found myself standing in formation and sweating in places I didn't know you could sweat in, and but also running and just having fun and developing and learning and becoming a soldier. And it was just an amazing process to me.
Did you make a lot of friends and connections in boot camp?
I did. I actually have I still have friends with a few of the ladies today, and we were. I think that boot camp today. I think that I'm not sure. You might be able to tell me this, but I think that it's co-ed. But you know, back when I did that, it was females and then males, and so we were the last female company, and so they were definitely going to make an example of us, and they did. We did a lot of push-ups in front of people.
Yeah. For me, it was a little bit different. I mean, I was Navy, so I went through in the winter of 94, and they had this sort of new program where they integrated companies. So
Okay.
we were male and female, but it wasn't like that for everybody. And I
Right.
don't know if it's like that now. I should actually ask that to some of my younger guests that
Yeah.
have been in more recently than I have. It's been
Yeah.
a while.
Right. Yeah. Suddenly we become those older folks, but all good.
I woke up one day and I was an OG, like I was older. I don't feel like it, but it's the dates tell me that I am. That
Yes.
is true.
Yes. Yeah. And hopefully the life lessons too.
Yes.
We learn as we grow. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. So tell me, so from boot camp, you went to AIT?
I did. I went to down to San Antonio um, and learned how to be a combat medic, and that because that was going to be my job, and it was thrilling and exciting and kind of scary all at the same time. It was a very in-depth program. Um, and when I came out of that, I ended up going to Oklahoma and to Fort Sill. And so I was a combat medic attached to artillery and in the 47th Field Medical Hospital. And it was again, it was pretty amazing. It was also a little bit daunting because there were so many of us that were exactly the same on paper, and so we really had. That's where I learned how to just start doing. You learn early on never to volunteer in the military, but we had to learn how to be somewhat aggressive in what we wanted to do in order to get any kind of rank. And so I went through almost 4 years of enlistment, and then I got out and I joined the Oklahoma National Guard as in the Army. And a month after that, there was a huge attack on America, and that was the Oklahoma City bombing. And I had only met my commanding officer. I'd come up and sworn in, and I lived 100 miles away. I still lived near the Fort Sill base or fort, and I thought, wow, that's a huge thing, but I'm probably not going to be involved in it. And actually, my sister called and said, "Hey, are you going to be called up?" And I was like, wow, that must have been a big deal because my sister lives in California. I guess everybody knows about this huge bombing, and about 2 days later, I was working and I was helping identify the victims of the Oklahoma City bombing. And that piece right there changed the trajectory of my life.
I can just imagine. I remember it.
Yeah.
I remember it, and it was just the anniversary.
Yes. Yes.
Coincidentally, as maybe a week ago, I think, as we're
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
And I definitely remember being so shocked and seeing the images of people and the damage. So I can't imagine actually being boots on the ground and
Yeah.
having to go in and help. What was that like for you?
Um, It was very surreal. It was so my job actually wasn't so much at the site. My job was down the street at the examiner's office, so the coroner's office, and we basically had, um, just to put it very bluntly, we had 3 refrigerated trucks that had body bags full of them, or laid out, and we had numbers spray painted on all the body bags. And so, rescuers and firefighters and such, salvagers were pulling the bodies out of the site, and they were putting placed in the trucks. And then it was our job to figure out who these people were. And so it was just extremely traumatic, I guess, at the same time. We didn't know what PTSD was back then. And certainly, I don't know about you, but as a cocky 22-year-old who basically, could run and do push-ups all day long, and was very athletic, and if you would have said, "Hey, you have this thing called PTSD," I probably would have told you to F off and walked away. Um, but and this is what my book talks about is, for 20 calendar years, I dealt with the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, and I didn't know that. So I kept myself away from people that I loved, and I ended up with a huge addiction issue and almost lost everything. And then the VA is actually who came in and gave me, I was able to be in some inpatient programs, and they saved my life, point blank. So yeah, I work for the VA now, and some days I love it. Some days, I mean, it's just like any other job, you know. But if I can, I wanted to tell you. So there was a veteran that I had come into his room, and I'm an RN now, and I work at the VA in the area that I live in, and I walked into his room, and he was just being a grumpy butt, you know. And I said, "Hey, what's going on today?" And he was like, "Well, he's just really frustrated." He said, "These doctors, they don't know what they're doing, and they're not working with me. They're not listening to me." And I just listened to him, and we just talked. We talked Army talk. And I don't know if you talk Navy talk with people, but you just know it when you know it, you know? And it was just probably a 5-minute conversation, but he was able to calm down a little bit. And so when the doctors came in, they chatted with him a little bit more deeply than if he would have been if he would have stayed and been frustrated. Anyway, he was able to get a lot of help done. And so we became kind of friends outside of that. And I started telling him, "Hey, I'm writing this book." And just long story short, he has passed. But his wife sent me a screenshot of his phone last week, and it said, "Hey, I saw this in his phone," and it says on the top of the note, "Get the book my friend wrote," and it was the name of my book, A Shadow of Me. And that just touched my heart so much, because that's why I'm working it. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I wanted to write a book. Just wanted to tell my story, but too, just to help people, because like you said earlier, what we do as this, as our generation is getting older or whatever, we can put a helping hand out to the younger generation and say, "Hey, these are the things we went through." And they're going to listen to some things, and they're also going to treat us like we treated our, it's like, "Okay, yeah, whatever." But if we can help in any way, and make things more fluid, that is just an amazing thing to be able to do that.
I agree. I
Yeah.
think that it is our responsibility.
Yeah.
But when you make such an impact on someone's life, it's such a beautiful thing. You
Yeah.
know, I when I was finishing A school, for us in the Navy, it's A school. You guys have AIT.
Right.
And I had to do a residency. So we have to go to the VA hospital and do some work on in one of the departments.
Yeah.
And so where I was put was on the ward with the senior vets.
Okay.
And so I got to help the nurses with like cleaning them, feeding them, taking care of them, and being a caregiver,
Yeah.
which I absolutely loved, but was also horrified by at
Yeah.
the same time, which is why I didn't choose it as a career. But I absolutely loved doing it and made friends with all of my veterans that were under my care. And one of my veterans passed away. I believe I can say his name after all these years, Mr. McNamee. In
Oh.
his room, he had pictures of his family, and you could tell he was deeply cared about.
Yeah.
And he was nonverbal by this point, and he was unable to move, so he had lots of ulcers on his body, and you'd have to clean them and stuff. And
Yeah.
I just felt like he needed gentle treatment.
Yeah.
And so I would sit with him and I would talk to him, and I was very gentle with cleaning him and everything. And then one day I went in and he had passed away.
Oh.
And it had such a profound impact on me, that connection that I had with him.
Yeah.
And his children said to me, he talked about you, like he could communicate with
Right.
writing, but he was
Yeah.
nonverbal. So he told them what a good caregiver that I was, and that he
Oh.
was so grateful to me. And they shared that with me, and I've obviously never forgotten it. It had
Yeah.
such an impact. So I
Yeah.
was thinking, when you were talking about the veteran who wrote to get this book,
Yeah.
how touching that must have felt for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
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 And I would, because he was in and out of the hospital a lot, as a lot of people are, when they are having some sort of disease process happening. Um, anyway, so one day I walked into his room, and his wife was in there, and he had had several family members in there. It was like Christmas time, so like everybody's in there. And I walked in, and he said, "Oh, there's my favorite nurse," and he started name. "Oh, this is my son. This is my wife. This is my," and it just felt just so nice, because uh, it just felt so, yeah, just nice to be part of that, and to be so welcomed, at your job, you know, and um, but yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. So
I love that, and I would like to go back a little bit.
okay,
So you said, back to your story. So
yes,
you said that after Oklahoma City,
hmm,
which I'm sure we all remember was a domestic terror attack,
yes,
um, it was traumatic for you. I can't even. I'm thinking about working in the coroner's office, right?
yeah,
And I'm thinking about myself and how I know that that's not something I could handle. I know that just doing that job psychologically would
yeah,
be a traumatic experience for me. I'm sure some people could do it and they can compartmentalize that in such a way that they can just do that with minimum impact to
right,
themselves. But me, I couldn't. So
yeah,
I deeply understand how that would have created PTSD in you.
yeah,
And I am just blown away because 20 years of living with PTSD and being unaware that you have it, I think is more common than
oh,
anyone talks about.
yeah, absolutely. And I think because so I didn't mention this. So I finished out my time in service with the Army National Guard, and I actually had gotten out. I went back into the Oklahoma Air Force National Guard because they were paying 100% tuition at the time. And that's how I went to nursing school. So I graduated from Oklahoma State University as an RN, as a nurse, and then I obtained my registered nurse licensing, and I started working at actually one of the closest hospitals in Oklahoma City to the bombing. It was St. Anthony's Hospital. I started working there in 2002 in the ICU, and I always had to be the 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 I don't want to say like I was the top of the class because I wasn't, but I had to be on the forefront of whatever I was doing. I had to be as the best of the best that I could be, and I wouldn't let myself not be that. And so many of the traits that we now know as PTSD, I'm sure I was exhibiting. I would have moments of anger, and also I just would shut people out, just boom, done. And meanwhile, I was working. I bought a house. I was living just pretty nicely, but everything just kept. It would always be just enough, and then it would drop. And I was always just unknowing of why this would be happening to me. And yeah, so for 20 years, that's how I lived. And I ended up just like many people in 2013ish, things got really wonky, and I ended up losing my house, and I started using drugs, and I lost everything over the next almost five, well, about till 2016. I found myself in Oklahoma County Jail, which is, I was not the type of person to ever be in jail. That's not how I was raised. But that's what happened. And it was actually, I'm sure it was, something from the universe or God, who said, we're gonna get a handle on things. And I sat in there because I don't like to learn things the easy way. I sat in there for 6 months, and 6 months is a long time to not get to be free. And there's a group called the Veterans Diversion Program, that's what it's called in Oklahoma City. But I think that there's those types of programs in many of our court systems, and it's a wonderful program because it's basically designed for people like me who, they were a viable piece of or part of our society. They go into the military, they become good soldiers or good Marines, or what do you call somebody in the Navy?
A sailor.
Okay, sailor. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, what's the word? Anyway, they become a viable piece of our military, and then boom, they do something stupid, and it's like something that can ruin their life. But they say, hey, but look at the background, look at what happened, and they're able to work with these people. So this woman who came, her name was Jessica. She worked with that program, and she came in, and I just remember she was so nicely dressed, and she had nice just impeccable taste, right? And she came in and she just said, Miss Mangini, what are we going to do with you? And my mouth opened, and I said, send me to rehab. And she just kind of looked at me surprised and said, okay, and closed her notebook and walked out the room. And I was like, what just happened? And not the next day, but about 2 months later, because nothing ever goes quickly. 2 months later, I found myself in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, at the VA. There's a place called the Domiciliary, and when I walked up to that building, I knew my life was changing for the good. And I opened myself up 100%. And it wasn't an easy process, and certainly not very fun sometimes. But transparency is a very important way to live. Sometimes, just because you can't fool everybody, and you can't fool yourself. You can fool sometimes people, but you know when you're lying, and you know when you're doing the right thing.
That's very true. Do you think that your transition out of the military had an impact on how you resumed civilian life?
I think so. And I think that there's, one thing with being around the VA, I am around sometimes people who are younger than me who are, who have come out of the military. And I know that just when I got out, they had several programs in place that would help people build a resume and, do like, try to help them find jobs. And I know now, even if somebody's, in the medical side of things or in the nursing side of things, they actually can basically test out and become nurses and things like that a lot faster than how I did it. But I know those programs are always growing. Is a really good thing.
I agree. I think we are fortunate to have the programs that we have, and I'm hoping that we are able to maintain them because
Absolutely.
there's
Yes.
there's there's so many things that are changing currently, and especially for veterans,
Yes.
and we need to be aware of in the current we'll just say political climate. And as veterans, we have to, make sure that we're getting the services that we've earned. So
100%.
I'm so glad that they were there for you and that you were able to get the help and the support that you've needed. And you're a perfect example of why they're so needed, and
Yes.
we've already earned them.
Yes.
So, a lot of veterans, when I do this podcast, I always ask the question of what was your transition out like? Because I myself had quite a difficult transition. And
Mm.
within 3 years of leaving the military, I found that I was 2 weeks from being homeless and penniless, and my life had completely fallen apart. And I had to like you, unknowing that I was living with PTSD,
Mm.
found my life on an upward trajectory and only to see it implode and
Yes.
come apart. And
Yes.
until I was able to start getting help and receiving the services from people who actually cared, because not everyone does,
Right.
um, it was a lot of trial and error. And I want to make that really clear for any veterans that are watching this that are in that place where they're struggling. Is like sometimes the first person that you're assigned, like the first therapist or the first doctor or the first anybody, is not a fit for you. And
Right.
not to allow that to make you give up, because I did. And I thought, oh, I can't trust the VA. I can't trust, you know what I mean? Like it's not working for me. And it took me longer to
Yeah.
get the help that I needed until I learned to advocate for myself and maybe get a different doctor, get a
Yeah.
different therapist, go to a different facility, and keep looking for programs that could help me to start my healing journey and that actually worked for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad that you were able to find that. And I also agree how important it is that we be those people that speak out and share, which is why I have the podcast for the generations coming up behind us.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I love so much about your podcast is that it is such a voice that is needed. That like the female veteran is so, like, we have to stand up and we have to say, hey, hold up. um this, we are a very integral part of America and our military. And I one thing that you just said just certainly resonated with me. So I was homeless. I was in Oklahoma City on the streets. It was snowing. It was cold. It sucked. And I had finally okayed basically the thought of asking for help. And so I called the 1-800 or whatever number, and the VA people said they'd call me back, for the housing thing. And I had a friend of mine who said, hey, you can stay at my house until they call you back. And I got to take a shower. I slept in a real bed. I mean, it was just, oh, right. And the lady calls me back and she said, she's going through the checklist and she said, "So where did you sleep last night?" And I said, trying to be honest, I said, "Well, my friend said I could sleep at his house until, spare bedroom." And, and she said, "Well, because you slept, because you had a place to sleep last night, I can't continue the phone call." And she basically hung up on me. And I had broken into a laundry facility in the back of a hotel because it was the warmest place I could find because I knew the dryers would have made it warmer. And that's where I was sleeping that night. And so if I would have just given up, because there was a big part of me that just wanted to say, "Right back at you, lady." But, you know, I I kept myself in a place where I was finally able to open up. And it's so important. So what you just said just certainly resonated with me.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of sometimes the rules that are in place. I had because um I will say I definitely struggle too. Like I still
Yeah.
struggle
Yeah.
uh even doing this podcast, right? And I watch female veterans start podcasts, and I started this podcast in 2019. And I have watched female veteran podcasts come and go
Yeah.
in that time. And I understand why, because we're trying to do this, but we're also in our healing journey, right? And
Right.
so sometimes it is a struggle for me to keep this going
Absolutely.
realistically.
Yeah.
And there have been moments where I have sought help with um with my PTSD and things like that. And I've gone through the VA,
Yeah.
and they have certain protocols, or certain things have changed, or certain funding for certain programs is no longer there
Right.
that were beneficial to me.
Yeah.
And the things that changed. So I had a resident at the VA, and I was going through a difficult moment, and I said, "This is what I need." And she said, "Well, we don't do things like that anymore. We do things like this now." And
Right.
I straight said to her, I mean, and then I will preface this by saying, in no way was I considering unaliving myself. But if you are, there is a support number in the description of this episode. But I was not at that place. But what I said to her is, this is why
Yeah.
veterans are, because we come for help. And if we know what we need, and your protocols do not allow you to help us in the way that we need.
Right.
And so, from listening to your story, and ultimately, um, I can't remember her name. I mentioned it before on the podcast, though. It's been a couple of years, but thankfully for her, she actually said, "Okay, you know what? I'm not supposed to do this." Good thing I probably don't remember her name. She's like, "I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm going to help you in this way that you're needing until I can figure out how to get you the help you need." And maybe it was because she was still a student, but she cared enough
Yes.
to help me. And she really did. She helped me so much
That's awesome.
that it like shifted everything for me, and I got on the trajectory that I needed to go on, and I was able to get unstuck, because sometimes we do get stuck.
Yes.
And so it was really beautiful. So I say this because when you tell me that you're only at the person's house for a night, you've been sleeping on the streets, and
Yeah.
because you say the truth, and you, for that one night, you had somewhere to sleep,
Yeah.
you all but get hung up on because that person in that moment was not able to see past protocol.
Right. Right. She was just following the algorithm.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
say this, if this, then that, basically.
Right.
If this, then that. Oh, that's not the case. Okay, see ya.
Yeah.
Like, no,
Yep.
that's not, veterans need more than that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
deserve.
Well, yeah. I mean, people deserve to, there's always extenuating circumstances. And yes, we have algorithms and protocols and standard operating procedures and things like that, in life, because there does need to be some structure, but there also needs to be the humanity there, and to see, uh, well, maybe most of the protocols that they were followed male veterans, and male veterans and female veterans are a very different species. You know, um, do we all wear the same uniform? Yes, but a female veteran is going to be a mother, and also probably some sort of caretaker, and trying to be a soldier or a sailor or a Marine or Coast Guard person, or, we try to hold everything that we can. And when things start falling, um, I know for myself, when things start falling, it was just anger that came out, and there was no talking. It was just, just bad news. And but I certainly am happy that the person that helped you and actually listened to you did, because I know you help a lot of people with this podcast.
Well, you can't pour from an empty cup,
You can't.
right?
That's very true. That's very true.
So I go and get my cup, get the support I need to
Yeah.
make sure my cup is full, that I can do this work. Because it's really important to me. And also something you said there was just so incredibly important that I want to actually touch on too. So I see a lot of things currently that says, well, female veteran,
Ugh.
well, aren't we all just veterans? And I just want to say, yes, we are all just veterans. We
Yes.
are all veterans. We are. Okay. But I think we can all agree that women and men do have some differences. Okay. And do
Yeah.
have different needs, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. So
Yeah.
I think it's okay to say, I am a woman, I am a veteran, and I'm part of this community of women who
Yes.
are veterans. It is a smaller community, and it's okay to be okay with being a
Yeah.
woman who is also a veteran. It is okay to make that distinction.
Yeah.
We're, in my opinion, we're very special. Okay, because we do something that a lot of other women have not done.
Right.
And we are also not men,
Right.
because it's actually a lot harder in some ways for us to do what we have done,
Yeah. I
right?
think
Which
so.
is why they kept women from doing it for so many years.
Yes.
So we do something incredibly difficult and incredibly brave, no matter when you served, no matter what, whether it was wartime or peacetime, you put your hand up, you took
Yeah.
that oath to the Constitution, and you served your country.
Yeah.
It's special.
Very much
And it
so.
and I think we should be glorified to be women. I think being a
Yeah.
woman is amazing, so why not? And I named this podcast the Female Veterans Podcast, so that, because I am a woman veteran and I am proud of that. And this podcast, I talk to other women veterans, and I do talk to some men on occasion,
Yeah.
right? But it's important, I think, to know that we're not trying to say anything negative by
Oh,
being
absolutely not. Yeah.
distinctive
Yeah.
about being a female veteran.
Right.
We're different, and it's okay.
Yes. Yes. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be yourself,
Yes. It's
Yeah.
okay to acknowledge that you're a woman. And hey, if you just want to say you're a veteran, cool. If that's
Right.
how you feel, no judgment.
Yes.
But I think that we shouldn't make it a bad thing to just
Right.
say we are women, we are different, and we deserve to be here.
Yes. I think that's a very poignant point to make. And I will tell you, I had a patient last week who she had been in the military. She was a medic also, and so we just kind of connected, and it was pretty cool because her husband had not served, and she, I said, yeah, I said, it's pretty cool. I said, you have to wear all of the shirts that say basically like, I served, he didn't, and so we just kept making jokes and just having a good time with that because, I'm sure that she's run into, oh, did your husband serve? It's like, no, I served. This was me. And certainly had that proudness to her. And it was neat to be able to, get to help in her care. And so, yeah, but how fun.
I love that. That's me too.
Yeah.
So I was in the hospital corps, which is like an army medic.
Right.
But also I am the veteran. So
Yeah.
whenever, typically I'm always the one who was the one who served in the military in my relationships. And
Yeah.
even my ex-husband, when we bought our home and everything, all the mail would be addressed to him as the veteran,
Right.
and everything. And I'm like, hello,
Yeah.
it was me. I
Yeah.
did that. So
Right.
I am a big advocate for, yes, go out and get that stuff. Put I'm
Yeah.
a veteran on your car. Wear the t-shirts, wear the hats, like put it out there. Let them know. That is one of the reasons this podcast exists,
Yeah.
because the perception of veterans are still predominantly as male. So
Yeah.
we need to let people know that we are out here and we do things and we've accomplished things and we matter.
One of the things that I love that I've been able to be blessed to be a part of is the "We Are Not Invisible" campaign in the military or in the VA. I'm sorry, and so I'm actually been able to. I worked at the Palo Alto VA and I've worked at the Portland VA, and I've been able to. They post big pictures of female veterans, and so on two different VA walls, I've had my picture up there, and the first time somebody saw me as not even, I wasn't even their nurse, but it was a family member of somebody else. They stopped me and they said, I think I saw your picture downstairs. I was like, oh, me? It was so fun. But it's certainly, it's an honor to be part of that. And not to, I mean, it is cool to see your picture up places, but not just to be like, wow, it's about me. It's not about me. It's about this female sisterhood of military women.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. And I'm very familiar with that campaign. Some members of the 6888 were part of that. They received the Congressional Gold Medal. I'm
Yeah.
really excited for them. Shout out to them. I had Liz Frazier, who is one of the women who worked very hard to make that happen on the podcast some years ago. And I'm going to try to catch up with her again soon. But that's such an incredible story. And I know that they got a chance to be part of that before. A lot of them have passed away now. I think most of them.
Yeah.
And so I became familiar with that program through them, but since then have met several other female veterans who have their pictures up around VAs as part of that program. And I think it's absolutely necessary and incredible.
I had one of the guys I work with, he's a veteran, and he was like, man, what do I got to do to get my picture up on the wall? And I was just like, boy, shut up. I said, this was something for the women and just leave it alone. And he was like, okay, well, good job.
Just let us get to do something.
Right? This is my spot.
Oh, yes. Well, I definitely think that these things matter and they're important, and I love seeing them. So I want to talk a little bit about your book. Now, I know you mentioned that because of the PTSD and you not knowing you had it. Okay, let me ask this first before we dive in, because I'm sure it's probably in the book. But what made you wake up to the fact that you had PTSD and that it was the cause of these like spirals in your life?
That's a good question. I think it really came about, one, because I think that there was so much more talk and publicity about PTSD and what it was. It was really coming out into the mainstream as, hey, this is something that's is truly something that can affect somebody. And I think I've like heard a couple of what the characteristics or might be, and I thought, that those kind of hit close to home. And then I finally had gone to a doctor, and this was probably just maybe a couple weeks before I spent all that time in county. I had finally gone to a doctor, and they said, well, you basically hit all of the points, and yeah, we're going to diagnose you with this. And that was a real turn. That was a real moment for me to think, okay, because it wasn't so much like, oh wow, there's something wrong with me. It was, oh wow, there's something really wrong, but it's not with me. It's something there though that needs to be taken care of. And I was also on, it was just a time in my life. I'd pretty much been on the streets for a few years, and I'd been just playing this stupid dope game, and I was tired. And I think, everything just aligned correctly to where I was like, okay, if this is something that, if my life is not going to end up either, dead or in prison, and then probably dead along those lines, then I'm going to have to make a change. And it was something tangible that I could appreciate, that was something that I could actually do something about.
How beautifully put, right?
Thank
I
you.
knew that there was something wrong, but there wasn't something fundamentally wrong with me, but it was
Absolutely.
something that could be healed. Like, powerful,
Thank you.
powerful. And I'm sure that there are people who will hear this podcast or see it, if you are catching it on YouTube, that identify with that,
Yeah, I think so.
you
I hope
know?
so. Yeah. Because I mean, I'm certainly, everybody likes to think that we're unique, and we are. But at the same time, there's a lot of similarities in life that we go through, and I think that just just the validation, I think was huge. Maybe that was the word I was trying to think of earlier. Just the validation. I think, it was like, wow, okay, there is something that's there.
Wow. And I just think about, you know, the impact of what PTSD has had in your life.
Yeah.
I mean, you have come from jail and living on the streets and, in the cycle of drug addiction, and have come through all of that, and the root is PTSD.
Yeah. The root was me doing my job as a soldier.
Wow.
So there was talk about somebody who talk about people who have gone over and above their job. So you mentioned that there was this person who basically listened to you and helped you. So, and I talk about this in the book too. Uh, so in when Timothy McVeigh, the one of the bombers from the Oklahoma City bombing, when he was in the Oklahoma County Jail, which that fact certainly kept me awake at night a lot of times while being there. Um, they had they had basically kind of built a courtroom at the basement of the jail because they were afraid that he was going to be um, somebody was going to do some sort of terrorist attack on him in the 3 block uh, drive to the courthouse. So they continued to use that courtroom. So that's the courtroom that I was sitting in when I met with the court official who said basically, well, we're throwing our hands up with you. We're done with you. This was before the veterans diversion court people had come to me. This person was just like, you know what? We tell you to come to court. You don't come to court. You know, basically just F you too. And I said, wait, I'm a veteran, and basically started crying. I'm sitting in the courtroom where Timothy McVeigh it was all just like full circle stuff. And this woman stopped and she said, wait a minute. She said, and I'm blubbering and I don't really usually cry like that in front of people, especially, trying to keep my cool on. No, it was all coming out. And she said, wait, you know what? My brother's a veteran. And the Army effed him up, and I told him I was going to help him get what he needed from the VA, because if they were going to do that to him, they were going to fix it. And so I'm going to help you. And if she hadn't have done that, if somebody hadn't helped you like that, so hopefully, if somebody's listening to this and they think, well, I've tried to talk to somebody and just keep trying. My motto in the years that it took me to get my RN license back, because it was not an easy process. It was very difficult. And every time I thought, okay, it's going to happen, they would be like, well, hold on a second. But my motto has been for years, make them tell me no. Just show up, be transparent, keep being honest, do the work, and make them tell me no. And I swear, if people will attempt to use that in their life, they're going to have things happen in their life that are just amazing. It's pretty neat.
I love that. My mentor, she always says, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Absolutely.
So that's the first step. You got to ask. And then the next step after that is make them tell you no. Don't give up.
Yeah.
And my personal motto is persistence is a superpower. So in fighting with the VA to recognize my disabilities, it took me 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, we might have a conversation off air.
Persistence is a superpower.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
It is. So all of that stuff, and I hope that it reaches the right person, because if you heard that, you were probably meant to hear it.
Absolutely.
It's for you. So let's talk about your book.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Yes.
So A Shadow of Me. Why that title?
So the original title was basically I scratched my name off the walls of hell. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that's a little off-putting. And I really didn't want to show my mom that there was going to be a word, hell in my title. And then I actually in my therapy of healing, I learned that I'm a pretty good artist. And I had I had painted this picture, and up in the corner of it, it kind of looked like a shadow of somebody standing there. And I'll send you the full picture of it, and then the cover of my book. But I just thought one day, it's a shadow of me. This is, it's still me. This was me the whole time I was going through all of this. But it wasn't the true me. And I think that I think that it just worked out as the title, and I really love it.
Fantastic. I think you did send me the cover of the book, so that will be on my Instagram at Creativity or at the Female Veterans Podcast. It'll be on my stories at Creativity. It'll be on the page for the profile page for the Female Veterans Podcast as I'm promoting this episode. So it'll be there. And tell me, what are we going to hear in your book? Is this about your journey?
So my book it's written like you and I would be sitting on a park bench, maybe with some vanilla lattes with extra shot, sitting between us, and just talking. And there's some laughter, there's some tears, there's just a lot of raw honesty, and and it's written from me joining the military to today. And so there's a lot of pieces in it, and just a lot of hopefully a lot of things that'll make somebody, enjoy reading it, but also really help them and show them there's, I didn't really get into the nitty gritty about being a female living on the streets, but I didn't hide anything. So, and then also how it felt like for me, I don't know about you, but it wasn't easy for me to say, oh, here, let me open everything up. And, one, I grew up in an Italian family. And so, we did not talk about our feelings. It was, how you doing today? Fine. That was it. And if it wasn't fine, it was like, what's the matter with you? Nothing. Okay, cool. Let's go. Let's move forward. So, it was painful to rip all of those barriers down that I had spent years putting up. But when I was putting them up, I didn't realize I was hiding myself inside. And that loneliness that comes, anyone with PTSD knows, or anyone with, and I don't want to just limit it to that, but the way I felt, because I've had severe depression and anxiety that came along with all of that. But anyone who's been in that position, you could be standing in a room and there can be hundreds of people there, and everybody in a great mood, and everybody so fun and everything, and you can feel so alone. And then people are like, well, what's wrong with you? And it's like, I have no idea, but all you want to do is feel like one of the people that's just enjoying life. Does that make sense?
It does. So much of what you said did, and I think it will, be so easily, like, identifiable within themselves as they hear this, for many people because yeah, you can feel so alone. All of that is so, real, you know?
Yeah. One of the things I talk about in my book, so my brother and sister had children, and so I'm an auntie, and now I'm a granty, and my nephew one day, he was, I think, 6, and I mean, everything about these little children, I just loved everything about them, but I could not figure out why I couldn't just move home. And he asked me one day, he said, you're not ever going to move back, are you? And he was like maybe 6 or 7. And it broke my heart, because I was just like, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't have a good reason. But later I realized it was because that was part of my disease, part of that mental health issue that needed to be addressed, that I didn't know that I needed to even address it. So all of those years of relationships that, I missed out on, which we have wonderful relationships now. So
That's so good to hear. I mean,
yeah.
I definitely understand that, you know.
Yeah.
It just takes it and it takes time,
Yeah.
and you have to be patient with yourself as you go through this process of healing, because it really is a journey and not a destination as
Oh,
cliche as that
absolutely.
is. But it's true. And I definitely think we have to be gentle with ourselves as we're going through the process.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, I think it's an amazing triumph story, to be honest with you.
thank you. Thank
You
you.
know, a lot of people don't make it out of many
Oh
of the
no.
situations that you found yourself in.
Yeah. I have so many people that I've known are gone. And it's just, it's to use it's sobering. It's sometimes almost overwhelming to think, what, why me, and not like I have survivor's guilt, but just, because it could have easily been me and not, but I have a piece I'd like to read if that's okay.
I would love that.
Okay. So this is the beginning of my chapter 17. It says, life changes for the better. So this is when I have gone to, I walked into the domiciliary in Leavenworth, Kansas, which is attached to the VA hospital there. And so here we go. You have a disease, but you are not the disease. The older woman had perfect combination of white, gray, and dark hair. It, as well as her clothing, was worn in a stunning fashion, and she held herself in an air of grace and warmth. She was the first therapist who I had opened up to, who listened, and whom I was able to convey the extent of the horrific tragedy that occurred in Oklahoma City, not to the state or to the country, but within me. It was a beautiful day. It was cold but beautiful. The white snow glistened outside the large bay windows of the Leavenworth, Kansas VA third floor conference room. If you've ever spent time in the Midwest, you'll understand this. If you've not, you should go sometime. But I would personally suggest the fall, when there's no snow and less chance of a tornado. Anyway, back to the story. I was in a dual diagnosis rehab program. Every one of us in the room was a veteran, and every one of us had an addiction and another diagnosis, PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. I was sitting with men and women of all ages, crusty, gray-haired old dudes from the Vietnam era, still arguing about Army versus Navy. Some had walkers, some in wheelchairs, and all with something to say. We were addicts of all sorts, alcoholics, some homeless, all veterans, and all fucked up. There were men and women around my age and younger, and oh my God, so much younger. There was veterans who had been in the Gulf War, Afghanistan, OEF, Operation Enduring Freedom, and OIF, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Some seemed so young, with bodies that should have been full of youth, but their eyes were as empty as mine. How on earth did I get there? Anyway, there's that. You got to read the book. You can get it pretty soon. It'll be out pretty soon. But there's that.
So where will we find it?
It's going to be on all the platforms, and also on. I have an Instagram of the Mangini 13, and then also through Quill Hawk Publishing. And on Quill Hawk Publishing, I have an author page. And if you Google A Shadow of Me and then my last name Mangini, it'll pull you to that author page on quillhawkpublishing.com.
Perfect. I'm going to put this up there. You tell me if that looks right to you.
I think it's the Mangini 13.
The Mangini. Okay, so let's get that edited, and we will put this up. And you tell me if I've got it right. That way people can follow you. And that way they'll see. Oh, whoops. No, not that one. Sorry. This one. But also follow my sponsor, Mental Health Code.
Yeah, you gotta remember the sponsors.
That's right. And follow Jenn, so that way you can know when the book is out and you can hear more of the story. It sounded great so far. So
thank you.
I think it will be a pretty great read. And I want to just say that you have dropped so much wisdom during our time chatting today. I wondered, what advice do you have for our veteran sisters coming up behind you?
I think one, have fun. To be someone who just, hit the ground running, literally, in the military, where, just do everything you can, and enjoy every moment of it, but also make sure that you are paying attention to your surroundings at all time, and don't blink, because you're going to go from being the young one to the old one, just like that.
So
And protect your knees. Protect your knees. Good, wear good arch support.
great
Right.
advice. Okay.
Thank
Thank you for sharing that. And I will add something. Youth is in your legs.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So mobility training,
Yes.
take care of your lower back, your hips, your legs, your knees. So important. Youth is in your legs. So I want to thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you.
And your story is so incredible. And, I didn't ever think about those who served, that you would be boots on the ground during the Oklahoma City bombing and the aftermath of that, and the impact that it would have on our service members domestically. So it's something to think about.
Yeah. I will add, I don't know anyone who was in the group that I was in. I do know that a few have passed. And I think that that's one of the reasons that this story is so important, because nobody else, I don't think, is around to tell it. You know.
It's
So
important work.
thank you.
We
Yes.
shouldn't forget that. We shouldn't, time goes by and tragedies become forgotten.
Yeah.
And I think that's one that's really important. Just like 9/11, because these
Yeah.
things happen here,
Yes.
you know. And when we forget, that's when things can happen again, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So
So yeah,
important
we
to
always need
remember.
to keep talking about stuff.
Yeah. So I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the Female Veterans Podcast. I really appreciate you being open to sharing your story with me. It
Thank
is an incredible story, and I'm so happy to see the work that you've done to go from trauma to triumph, and how you continue to help other people.
Definitely. That's one of the things I'd like to do the most with this book, is be able to start a foundation that will help women um, be able to get into facilities or get into therapy or do something, especially female veterans, but just be able to get help when they need it, where they need it.
We have to help each other.
Yes. Yes.
I
Absolutely.
agree.
Thank you so
I
much.
agree. It's been my pleasure. And with that, I am going to wrap it up. Again, thank you so much for being a guest. And I will wrap up the show and say a proper goodbye shortly. I'll see you in just a minute.
All right. Thank you.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. All of you that have been here from the beginning, and to all the new listeners and viewers, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for spending time with me and listening to these stories that are they're so important. So I definitely want to thank you for that. Yes, there is a newsletter coming. Still working on that. There are new episodes coming. I have a event with the Barbara Giordano Foundation. You can find them at the barbaragiordanofoundation.com. Here, I'm going to put it up. If you want to be a part of the workshop that I am doing on this weekend. So I'm doing 3. And they're going to be really exciting. If you go to the Female Veterans Podcast on Instagram, you can find out more information. I want to give a shout out to the Barbara Giordano Foundation. You can go to their website. And let's see, I'll put it up for you. Hold on. And find out more about all the services that they have. Okay, so there. Go to the Barbara Giordano Foundation. They have all these services for female veterans. They do tons of stuff. I also love Hope for Veterans. I'm on the board there. If you are in Florida, I used to live there. So if you are a female veteran, you live in Florida, you need some help, support, community, seek out Hope for Vets. The information is in the description box below. The Female Veterans Podcast and the Barbara Giordano Foundation do lots of things together. So definitely go and support that foundation. It's the Barbara Giordano Foundation.com. To make it easier for you, you can go follow me here at all of these places. For the Female Veterans Podcast, I will be posting today about the workshop that's coming up on Sunday the 4th. So if you're around, and you're available on May 4th, then you can come and join the workshop. We're going to be doing, it's lots of stuff, you know, I coach, so it's lots of stuff about mindset, but all of these things are geared towards female veterans. We're going to be doing another one about hobbies being therapeutic, finding therapeutic hobbies. We're going to be doing another one about your nervous system and things like that. So come and join in. All of these are geared towards female veterans to help you be more successful and thrive in life. I do also do private coaching for female veterans at a discounted rate, which, surprise, you probably didn't know that. So if that's something that interests you, you should direct message me on the Female Veterans Podcast on Instagram. If you want to work with me for accountability or support or mindset work, things of that nature, then you can reach me there. But I really love you guys. Like, I love you guys. Yeah, the support and the love that I get from all of you mean more than you could ever imagine. And right now is a time where we really need to stick together. We really need to remember our training, and we really need to just get ready and stay ready. Right? So that support system is more important than ever. And so just remember that I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next time.